choose violence.
What's up, brownies? Let's go ahead and tackle this hot button topic that's going on concerning the grooming that's going on between staff and students in the school and all of these blurred lines. Now I'm going to show you a flashback so that you can see one type of grooming I've already covered on my channel. And that is the type of grooming where adults will do these small incremental things in order to form inappropriate, intimate relationships with the youth. And of course, the other type of grooming, which is what the students are doing to the adults, is literal grooming, the playing in the hair and the head and the adornments and things of that nature. Now, all of this started when a few weeks ago, there was this teacher who let his students take his braids down towards the end of class. He filmed it. He put it on his personal social media page. It went viral, and due to all of the complaints, he was fired. Now, what amazed me was the discussion was being had to where, why are you vilifying this man? He doesn't have any type of record of being a sexual predator, and thus people really felt like they had to go back and research and pull other videos to prove whether or not this man's behavior was inappropriate or to determine his possible motives. So, of course, you know that when a few days ago or last week, the videos started to go viral once again of a different race, where because it was towards the end of school, the principal and some of the teachers were letting their students bedazzle the bald heads of the staff members. And people were having a totally different opinion of this. Some people said that this was just wholesome and this type of activity was okay, whereas the other activity was not. And I noticed that there was an exorbitant amount of attention being placed on race and other factors that really should not matter. So before I give my detailed feedback, I'd like for you all to listen to the insight from an actual professional that works with the youth in the classroom and outside of the classroom in a youth organization.
We're asking the wrong questions about the teacher who was reportedly fired for having a group of girls take down his braids in class. We're watching this video and we're asking, are his intentions pure and is this too intimate? But those are the wrong questions to ask because we can only answer them after somebody's been harmed. The questions we need to be asking are, what is being normalized by this interaction? And what feelings might this interaction be causing in a child? As a youth development professional, your intentions are irrelevant when you realize your job is to model behavior that can and should be replicated by other people in your position. So what is being normalized by this interaction is being live streamed, physical touch and proximity. And it's being normalized not only for the young people, but for everybody watching. And that's important. At best, this interaction creates a foundation for something called transference. Transference is when feelings and desires get projected from one person to another based on past relationships and unmet needs. Transference can create feelings for a kid that are inappropriate and unproductive for a teacher-student relationship. So a young person who has unmet needs for affection, attention, and validation might project feelings of admiration onto an adult who just introduced physical touch into their relationship. That, in and of itself, makes a young person more vulnerable to harm when those inappropriate expectations aren't met. If those inappropriate expectations are met, or if they take those same boundaries into relationships with other adults. Inviting physical touch into a teacher-student relationship creates fertile ground for grooming. That's the process a predator uses to build trust and emotional connection with a young person they intend to manipulate, exploit, or harm. And they might use attention, affection, guidance, and special treatment to fill an emotional need from a kid's life. Then they'll desensitize that young person to physical touch and sexual topics, starting small and building up. All the while, they're testing their boundaries to see how far they can push before a young person resists or someone speaks up. The entire time, there's plausible deniability. The point is to slowly push the boundaries and make everybody involved question whether or not their suspicions are warranted. The kid, the parents, the people around the kid. So if something doesn't feel right, but you just can't put your finger on why, or it doesn't seem like a big deal. If it seems like a gray area, but just not big enough to speak up about, that's the point. Making people question their own instincts means the victim and the audience are groomed or prepared for the next step. So how can you tell the difference between someone who's unknowingly creating the conditions where transference might occur and someone who is grooming a young person and the people around them for abuse? You can't. If you could, kids would be a lot safer. There are people who will say that this sort of interaction is necessary to build culturally responsive relationships in school. It's not. Cultural relevance and appropriateness come from the respect that teachers have for young people, the content they present, and the way they present that content in culturally responsive ways. There are 100 activities this teacher could have used to engage his entire class in culturally relevant bonding instead of having a handful of girls take down his braids. It would have been more effective, more inclusive, and help build their bonds toward one another in ways that are going to benefit their classroom. But he had an appointment to make, so he put his needs first. So in this video, I see a teacher normalizing the idea that his students will provide care for him using physical touch. It provides no benefit to the student-teacher relationship that couldn't be achieved in more effective ways. And if we let it slide, it provides a much wider gray area for people who intend to harm kids. Couple that with the fact that he has another video where he answers the students' questions about whether he prefers a pretty face or a big butt. Another video where he comments on the girl's size. And another video where he shows that he can be alone with students for a prolonged period of time. And it feels like we're being led down a path of escalating inappropriateness and desensitization. It feels like young people are being taught to accept standards in an adult-child relationship that will put them at risk in the future. It feels like professional negligence or grooming. I can't tell which, but it doesn't matter. It's unacceptable.
So what I noticed is we are looking at two situations that are pretty much identical and straightforward, and we are clouding them with all of these different things that don't matter and trying to use that to determine which situation is wholesome and acceptable and which situation is creepy and predatory. And what I want you to see is the internal programming and biases that you have is what's causing this. You see, a basic principle of my platform is balance equals righteousness, and anything that lacks balance will inevitably lead to chaos. So the implicit biases that you have is what is creating the imbalance in the way that you view these situations. And this is why the comment section on these different platforms in regards to these two different situations has become chaotic. We've overcomplicated this. And let me show you how and why you're doing this. See, I'm working on this project called The Godvernement, and I'm trying to explain the social stratum to you, these different hierarchies, and once again, this programming that the media gave us that tells us how we are allowed to treat each other. Ultimately, these are the ways that we are taught that relationships are to be forged. And there are 6 different elements. 5 of them we'll cover here. So your biases are forged by finances, orientation, religion, gender, ethnicity, and desirability. Let's look at the first 5. Finances is going to be your socioeconomic status. Orientation is sexual, meaning are you identifying as heterosexual or anything on the LGBTQ plus spectrum. Religion is a catch-all for your spirituality or your theology, your belief system. Next, we have gender, which for the purposes of this situation, we're just basically looking at male versus female. And then ethnicity, which is a catch-all for race and nationality, all of the things that you all use interchangeably that shouldn't be used interchangeably. But for the purposes of this video, we're looking at race. Desirability is something that I'll cover in another video when we're talking about this concept as a whole. But what I'd rather you focus on is how do you get rid of your bias? And it's actually very simple. To check for bias, all you have to do is reverse the elements of forged. So if when you reverse those elements, if it also changes your answer or changes the way that you view the situation, that's how you know that it is bias. So let me give you an example that I think is very relevant to this particular topic. I remember in my youth the case of Mary Kay Letourneau. Now, the full details of this case is definitely worth doing some independent research on, but I'll just give you a brief overview. Basically, you have a 34-year-old teacher who slowly groomed a 12-year-old student into an intimate relationship. And this later led to that same teacher becoming pregnant by this child, and thus they married later on in life. It's a very twisted tale. The point that I want to make, though, is the reason why this didn't raise any red flags initially was because People were saying some of the same things that you all were saying. Oh, well, this is just a wholesome relationship between a dedicated teacher who's taken a liking and a special interest in this student. Nothing foul going on here. And also, I want to note that as it came to punishment, initially, this teacher was given a slap on the wrist, basically, all things considered, and told, now, don't you go near that student again. It's forbidden. And of course, she did, as predators tend to do. And then the second time around, while she was pregnant, she was placed into prison for a longer sentence, which I think still was not long enough. The point that I want to make, though, with the elements of forged is this. If we just switch around some key things, such as the genders and the race. So if this were a young white girl who was 12 years old and a male teacher who was 34 years old and a person of color, do you think that the second time would have even happened? No, because in the American justice system, he would have been properly vilified and crucified the first time. And this is the example that I use to show you all how biases really do you all a disservice. It's time that we just be clear in our communication and what we will and will not accept between teachers and adults and what we deem appropriate, and hold everybody to the same standard across the board, regardless of the elements of forged. But once again, let's listen to a professional who could say it much better.
I want you to imagine two different scenarios for the situation. Based on what I said about the teacher who was fired for having students take down his hair, I want you to comment which one you think I believe is appropriate. Scenario 1. A teacher noticed that a handful of girls are into bedazzling, so one day during class he says, you know what I think will be cool? Bedazzling my head. If anybody wants to come do that, come up during silent work time and we can do it today. Scenario 2. The student body is asked what rewards they want to receive for passing the state test. They all submit their ideas for a vote, and the winning option is to have 2 girls from their school bedazzle the principal's bald head. Comment now which one you think I would approve. Before I answer, I will say that there are important differences between the two. The first difference is, who does the activity benefit? In the first scenario, the teacher is asking students to provide him a service. In scenario 2, the students have chosen their incentive for their benefit and amusement. The second difference is how the participants are chosen. The teacher in scenario 1 asked an entire class, knowing who the likely participants were. Not only does it sound like targeting, it creates opportunities for feelings of favoritism and an expectation of reciprocity. In other words, I'm doing my teacher a favor, so maybe he'll do one for me later. In scenario 2, the educator had no say or influence over who was chosen, so there's little chance of feelings of favoritism or reciprocity. So which one do I approve of? Have you typed your answer yet? Maybe you won't be surprised to learn that I approve of neither. The question is not, does this educator have ill intent? The question is not, do these kids have inappropriate feelings? The question is, would you want this to happen if they did? If either side was having impure thoughts, would you want this activity to happen? And how would you feel if, after seeing this, another teacher started approaching those girls and asking to be next? Have we created or compromised a safe environment for that school? A safe school environment means that the action is acceptable no matter anyone's intent. A safe school environment means that even the escalation of an improved behavior is safe. Watching kids scratch and rub a teacher's heads, touch their faces might seem innocent to you, but it opens the doors to behaviors that can be misinterpreted or escalated. It's a short step from, that was nice, could you do that again, to a situation where boundaries are blurred and dissolved. A lot of us are thinking back on our own experiences in school and saying, but stuff like this happened in my schools all the time. And I'm sure it did. You know what else happened in your schools? Abuse, grooming, sexual misconduct. Sexual misconduct is happening in every school in America. 10% of all kids between 8th and 11th grades report experiencing sexually inappropriate behavior from teachers and coaches. Well-meaning people refuse to change their behavior because why would I change? I never hurt a kid. Because of that, we give passes to actions that are taken advantage of by predators. Everywhere there are young people, there are people looking to take advantage of them. Every place that has kids has predators, and because of that, every adult's actions with kids should be uncomplicated and difficult to misconstrue. If you don't want a predator to normalize an action that you're taking, don't do it. And if you aren't willing to change your actions to make kids safer, are you really there for kids? Because the question is not, do the adults or kids have inappropriate feelings? The question is, would you want this to happen if they did? Because in every school, there are teachers who do.
And I just want to close out the video with asking this. When did it become a necessity for teachers to do all of this TikToking and social media and recording the students and putting it on your personal pages? Why is this necessary? Why is it allowed? And if we just stop things like this, don't you think that it would help curb some of the other behavior? I would like to encourage you all to watch these films and documentaries if you want a bit more insight on how gullible and malleable the youth is and how easy it is to take advantage of them, or how their respect for authority figures gives a lot of adults free range to just put these children through all types of things. And also, if you like this video or these types of topics, please share. I would like for you to comment what your opinion is, and then also subscribe and stay tuned for more videos. So you